Married at First Sight and Afterparty, Season 18, Episode 15. Nancy Drew was in full detective mode. She interrogated everybody, but she solved her case. This episode was crazy, and I'm here for it. Hi, I'm Tamara, and this is Tamara Lynette Tales. This episode of After Party was an hour. The first half hour featured Camille and Nancy and an astrologist. Then they had Emem and Wancho. Now, Keisha basically had them give their opinions on Nancy Drew's case. In this episode, Karla and Wancho went to a pottery place to make vases. Madison and Allen raced bumper cars. Camille and Thomas chilled in the hot tub. But the main characters of this episode was David's text message and Nancy Drew's investigation to discover who done it, who he intended to send it to. Nancy left no stone unturned. You hear me? She must have had 37 different conversations with 23 people about this stupid text message. So they picked up where they left off from last episode after Madison walked away from the table. She claimed she wasn't trying to be insensitive, but there was just too much drama and negativity, and she was there to have a good time. So Nancy Drew joined her along with the other wives in the kitchen. And by the way, I call her Nancy Drew because she turned into a detective after she received David's text message. So Nancy actually teared up a little bit because she felt like no one wanted to hear her side of the story because they blamed her for not giving David attention. So it's not the lack of attention as much as it was the rudeness, put downs, and disrespect. Regardless of what Nancy might be going through, it was difficult to feel empathy towards her because she's been such a jerk to David since day one. In any case, the girls rallied around Nancy. Camille said she wanted to hear David's side of the story. That's why she was quiet. Madison seemed to be chilling in the background, just listening and not talking. We listen and we don't judge. Meanwhile, David and Allen had a little chat, and David told Allen he messed around with Tiffany because he wanted some tender love and care. I've never been rejected the way Nancy has rejected David, and for 7 weeks straight, but I imagine it can make him want to find someone who thinks he's fun, attractive, and not a loser for living in his parents' basement. But should he have waited to get his freak on until after taping the show? Yeah, I think so. So Nancy went outside to talk to David, and he apologized and took accountability for everything that he did, including trying to push it off on her for not getting what he needs out of the marriage. He said that's something he's been feeling for a while and finally coming out. Nancy didn't seem to accept the apology, though. She asked why it took so long for him to get to this point, meaning like telling the truth if that's what he's doing now. And she said, even last night you were blaming me for your behavior. Why did you blame me? So David started to answer, but before he could finish his sentence, she said, do you think it's my fault? He said he didn't realize he needed affection. That's why he's apologizing, because he misread himself, basically. Okay, David. So she put her detective hat back on and said, we agreed I was trying, but now you're saying that I wasn't really trying. So were you lying then, or are you lying now? He said, I don't think you were really trying. So you lied to me a few times. Girl, calm down. That's more like a white lie than an outright lie in your face kind of thing. So you were texting Tiffany just for a few weeks. Is that the truth, or is that a lie? It's the truth. How do I know? I told you I deleted her contact because there was a temptation being that I was in marriage. When David starts talking fast, we know he's lying. So they went back and forth on whether or not he's telling the truth. And Nancy Drew said she wants to see Tiffany's contact information on his phone. I deleted the contact information. Well, isn't that convenient for you? Yes, it is. I know I've said this 1,000 times, but David is a horrible liar. So Nancy left the scene, moved on with her investigation, and went to talk to the sisters to get some so good advice. She told them her Madison theory and asked what she should do, and they advised her to ask David, and Nancy's like, he's gonna lie. Then they told her to ask Madison. So they weren't really helpful. Where the heck are the experts? Somebody needed to call one of them up on an iPad, cell phone, smartwatch, or something. If ever there was a scenario that called for professional advice, this was it. Meanwhile, Madison and Allen went for their bumper car excursion. Afterwards, Allen asked her if there's any part of her that is thinking, I like this guy. Maybe I should take a chance on him. And she said, yes, because I'm still here. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Okay, still here. Still there for your husband, for the free excursions, or to fool around with someone else's husband? So Alan and Nancy Drew had a chat, and he wanted to check in on her to see how she's doing after last night. And Nancy said she felt like she was dismissed and that Alan was dismissed by David really quickly as well. So he talked about how after he hurt Madison, he realized how much he really cares for her. Then Nancy Drew put on her detective hat to continue with her investigation and asked Alan if he knew David was texting other women. So she let him know that David said that he was with him that night because it happened the night that they were all hanging out. She shared her theory of what she thought happened. Not her main theory, but a theory. The one where she thinks David saw someone across the room, thought they were good looking. So he sent her that text. Okay, but how would you be able to text that person? He would have to approach her and exchange numbers with her at some point during the night. Like somebody would have seen that. So Alan advised her not to dwell on the details, though. She said she feels like she has one of two options. Either she forgives and forgets, or she and David fight it out. Nancy Drew, we all know you were choosing chaos. Let the games begin. Now, speaking of games, later the group played a game called Who's the Most Likely? Like who's the most likely to get killed in a horror movie? Who's the most likely to have an orgy? And each cast member writes down the name of someone who they think qualifies for the situation. It's a little similar to the game they like to play on this show, Never Have I Ever, in that it can get you in trouble by making you admit to something controversial you may have done in your past. So while the game was happening, Nancy put on her detective hat and then rolled up to the kitchen to interrogate Alan again while he was making dinner. So, of course, she had to bring up the text message again. And she shared some of the pieces of her investigation, but said she's not ready to say who the main suspect is yet. Her first line of questioning was fine. Things like, do you remember David talking to anyone else that night? Being on his phone, him doing anything out of the ordinary, stuff like that. Alan didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. And I think she should have left it right there because it's too soon to put Madison's name in the mix on a hunch and throw a grenade in Alan's marriage. But no, she couldn't help herself. She kept asking Alan question after question after question to lead him down the path to Madison. It took him a minute, but it finally clicked that she was suspecting his wife. Now, it seemed obvious that Alan never thought about the person being Madison. Nancy had to drop a lot of clues on his foreheads for him to finally get it. So once Alan realized his wife was the main suspect, he started getting misty-eyed. I felt so bad for him. Nancy asked, "Why are you getting so emotional?" Nancy, you are so jaded by your own marriage that you can't see this man actually cares about his. You didn't need to drag Alan into your investigation until you had hard evidence. What if you're wrong? There are only a few days left in this experiment. You could potentially change the outcome of their decision day with your little theory. So anyway, she tried to smooth it over by telling him, it's just a theory. It's just a theory. I could be wrong. And she had no love to give to help console him either. Not a pat on the back, wipe a tear off, a limp hug, 2-finger fist bump, a peck on the forehead, wipe down the counter, like do something. So Alan said he would be really hurt and disgusted if it's true, and he would lose his shiz if it was. Now, Alan seemed to be having a good time at the retreat up to this point until Nancy had to go and throw 12-day-old asparagus juice on it. And with that, she took her investigation to Madison. So she laid out her case to Madison as evidence as to why she doesn't think there's a Tiffany and explained that she thinks that David saw someone across the room and meant to send that text to that person. But then eventually she asked Madison if the text was meant for her. And Madison said, it shouldn't have been. I don't think it was. Girl, you look guilty, you behave guilty, and you sound guilty. I've said this before. Madison giggles a lot when she's in an awkward situation, like a nervous laugh. It was obvious she was lying. Madison confirmed that they do have each other's phone numbers, though, but they've only texted to confirm whether or not they're going to the gym. So to confessional cam, Nancy said it all sounds so suspicious because of Madison's response. She feels she should have said, "Oh my God, no, absolutely not. It wasn't for me," instead of, "I don't think it was for me. It shouldn't have been for me." So Nancy went back to the sisters, Camille and Emem, to give them an update on her case and share Madison's response. And they seemed a little surprised. They told Madison she should ask David, but Nancy said David will lie. Meanwhile, back in Madison's cell block, she went to go check on Allen, who was laying in the bed upset. He told her he needed a minute and he'd be downstairs later. Basically, shoot her away. So Madison looked concerned, but I think it was more concerned about getting caught than she was about Allen. So through the confessional cam, Allen is now using Nancy Drew's words by saying he's spiraling because Nancy's theory is feeling more likely and makes sense. He said, "Now the seed is planted, and in my head, the seed is growing." Thanks a lot, Nancy Drew. You shouldn't have gone to Allen until you had concrete evidence. Now he's miserable. Meanwhile, there are other couples in the house. So Juancho was serenading Karla by the fire. The song went something like, "I'm feeling good. I'm feeling right. I'm chilling all night with my girl by the fire. It's a shame people are fighting. People are liberalizing. I don't know what people are doing. Can't we all just get along, please?" Why does this band keep trying to sing? But Karla is such a great cheerleader. She was grooving to her husband's off-key serenade like he was Bruno Mars. So back to the investigation. Nancy called David downstairs for another cross-examination. She said, "I have one more question." "I told you I'm done with this conversation." "Well, I'm not, and I have another question. I already talked to Madison, but I want to hear your side of the story." Ha! Note how she phrased that, your side of the story, to make it sound like Madison may have confessed something. So Nancy asked, "Was the text meant for Madison?" "No." "Are you curious as to how I came up to that conclusion?" "No, I'm not curious." "So to you, it makes sense that I would think it was her." That's you thinking what you want to think, and that's what you want to say." What? "If that was me and somebody threw that out there, I would be like, oh my God, no, there's no way." Apparently, she believes everyone should react like they're in a soap opera. So David said, "Because I already told you that I'm already done with this conversation. Is that all you want to ask me?" "Yes." "There's nothing else?" "No, I think I got my answer. I'm going back to watching baseball." And then he walked out of the room. So then he left without Nancy really getting any concrete answers other than reading his body language. Then Madison went over to talk to Nancy Drew, and she wanted to know why Nancy came to her about the text message. And Nancy said, "Because you were out with him that night." Madison said, "Karla was too. Did you ask her?" "No, because I know you're David's type. He likes blondes." Now, we didn't hear Nancy Drew ask why she and David disappeared that night and left Karla on the dance floor. I know Madison claimed they were looking for her cell phone. Why didn't they just tell Karla they were going to go look for her phone instead of sneaking off? Now, knowing Nancy, she probably asked the question. We just didn't get to hear it. So Nancy criticized Madison's response when she asked about the text being meant for her. "If it were me, I would say, oh my God, no, it was not meant for me." There she goes again. "Instead, you were like, it shouldn't have been meant for me." Madison said, "My reaction is my reaction. Either you believe me or you don't." Sitting there giving David type answers. So Madison explained that she and David have only exchanged a few text messages about meeting up at the gym. And Nancy asked if they message each other on social media. And Madison said no. So Madison even went as far as offering to get her phone. So she went upstairs to grab it. Now, I'm surprised Nancy didn't follow her up there to make sure she didn't delete anything. So Madison came back and opened up her phone for Nancy to inspect the evidence. When she opened Instagram, Nancy said, "David's name's on top." Madison ignored that comment, though, and proceeded to show her that there's no DMs between them. Duh, if they were, you would have deleted them before coming back downstairs with your phone. So Nancy Drew said, "Since we're going down this dark road, can you just show me your messages?" So Madison scrolled through a whole bunch of text conversations on her phone, but didn't have one from David, which was stupid. Clearly, you keep your text conversations because you have dozens of them. Why would you completely delete your conversations with David about going to the gym? But now I'm getting mad because she's trying to play me like I'm stupid. So Nancy said, "It's weird that you don't have any from David when you said that you two texted about the gym." And Madison changed up her story. "Well, I didn't say we texted. I just said we communicated." "Yes, you did. You said you texted each other." "Well, that was a long time ago." "Long time ago? What are you talking about? You've only known each other for 7 weeks." Madison is another bad liar. So Nancy straight up told Madison, "I don't believe you." Nancy was no joke. She was not playing. So Madison said, "Okay," and she walked away. On Afterparty, Nancy said they didn't show when she asked Madison to search her text messages for David's name. Dang, that's a good one. Nancy missed her calling as a real detective. So Nancy said David's name was sprinkled in various conversations in Madison's phone, but Madison closed her phone and wouldn't let Nancy see. So Madison said, "I'm sure you have text messages talking crap about me that you don't want me to see as well." And Nancy's like, as a matter of fact, I don't. So this episode has got me feeling all kinds of emotions because I'm rooting for Nancy to get the evidence to prove David and Madison are lying. But at the same time, I'm still upset with Nancy for being so mean to David for a long time. But David shouldn't be creeping with Madison. That's a jerk move. Plus, I don't want Alan to get hurt. After Madison leaves, a producer went to her room to talk to her about this situation. He said, "Is there any truth to it?" And Madison paused and said, "I don't know. I never wanted to hurt anybody. Alan would be crushed." Never wanted to hurt anybody? Then why did you play Alan? Of course he's going to be crushed because you toyed with his emotions so you could stay on the show and build a relationship with David. That's cold-blooded. Anybody would be crushed if they were treated like a bridge to get to someone else. Meanwhile, Nancy didn't know about this conversation between Madison and a producer, so she kept making her rounds and this time talked to Karla. So she brought Karla up to speed on what was going on, and I could see Karla's wheels turning as Nancy spoke. I have a feeling Karla suspected something was going on between Madison and David before Nancy did. Nancy said she could be wrong, and if she is, she'll put her tail between her legs and go apologize to everyone, but she thinks she's right. So at this point, it's 10:30 at night. Then Madison went to David's room to ask him to go downstairs for a chat. So David claims he was sleeping. Madison told David that Nancy pulled her aside and it didn't go very well. She said she wanted to be honest with him. "We hit it off right from the start, and I enjoy our gym dates and when we hang out with each other's friends. And I just like you, and probably more than I should. And I don't think I'm going to continue in my marriage." Girl, you just told Alan this afternoon that you're thinking about taking a chance on him, hinting a yes on decision day, that you wouldn't be here if you weren't in it with him. Now, 3 hours later, you're running away with David? Anyway, David said he appreciates her and the attention she gives him and enjoys her company, and he has a good connection with her. What kind of attention has she been giving you, David? Because according to Madison, you don't text or DM each other. So is this in-person attention? So she said they don't have to jump into anything. They can continue working on their friendship, quote unquote. He said, "I'll be honest with you. I could see you being my ride or die. And the text message was meant for you." Why? Well, I never received it. Why? These two have the silliest reactions when they're lying. I believe they're acting for the cameras right now. I think they already know how they feel about each other and have probably been twerking in the sheets for a while now. And I don't mean twerking. Since they are busted, producers probably made them have this conversation. I bet they've been talking about being in a full-blown relationship with each other prior to this moment. David went to Alan and said, "I need to talk to you." And Alan said, "Fudge me." He already knew what was up. At this point, he just needed to hear the story. On Afterparty, Juancho said David and Alan were really good friends. David said that me and Madison have a connection that you and her don't have, or that I don't have with my wife. Like, who's on first? Dude, just say you have a connection. So David claimed they haven't been physical. Yeah, all right. We just vibe. It's natural and not on purpose. We just vibed hard. Alan was pissed. He said, I don't give a flapdoodle. First of all, I saw you as a friend. David said, I still see you as a friend. David, come on now. You are having a relationship with his wife behind his back, and you both were lying to him about it. He's not trying to curl up on the couch and watch Love is Blind with you. Alan said, Fluff you. And David was like, okay. So Alan said, second, I put a lot of trust in her unwarranted. I knew I wasn't her man from day one, but I always told her the moment you don't want to be with me, tell me. She agreed, but she never said anything. She's bull snizzled me. She played me. David said, no, she didn't, bro. David, she was having a relationship with you while telling Alan she was working to build a marriage with him. That's the definition of getting played. You trying to defend and protect your woman, but she was wrong. There is no defense. Alan said, farfinickle you and farfinickle her. Then he asked, is Madison someone you could see a future with? David said, I'm going to keep it 100. Yes, and it's effed up, but I can't help it. Alan said, go for it. I'm done. And then he stormed off. Now I'm happy Alan didn't try to fight to keep Madison, but he didn't deserve this. Even if Madison didn't want to tell Alan about David, she didn't have to lead him on and be so critical and pretend to want the marriage. And David was smiling in Alan's face, pretending to be a good guy and his friend while fooling around with Madison behind his back. Woo, Madison and David are a mess. So Madison probably wanted to stay on the show so she could spend time with David, but she didn't have to give Alan false hope, knowing he liked her more than she liked him. So Alan was upset and went outside, and Emem went after him. He seemed a little reluctant, but he finally let Emem hug him while he cried. Now, this was potentially a dangerous situation because Alan seriously wanted to hurt somebody. Emem and Wancho talked him out of it, but I'm thinking a producer or expert needs to stop filming and get this guy some help. This is their fault for picking the wrong person for him. He didn't sign up for this. So Alan said, the first day of the honeymoon, I noticed something was off, and Madison picked apart little things about me, like my shirt. You don't like my shirt? I'll get another fluffing shirt. So he said he spent $3,000 on new clothes to please her. Dang, just think about it. Alan could have been trying on clothes while Madison was texting David. Like, did they laugh at him behind his back? Ooh, this could be deep. On Afterparty, Wancho said Alan got Invisalign to please Madison. And I think Alan mentioned it too when he was talking to Wancho and Emem. So Alan was done and decided to go home. So he went back inside to pack his things. Meanwhile, Madison was upstairs and asking if she should go down to have a conversation with him. Then she heard him throw a cup and punch a cabinet. And Madison was like, okay, not right now. I just wonder what really goes on behind the scenes because Madison didn't really seem to have any remorse. It looked like she was just ready to film another scene on a TV show, not fess up to him about stabbing him in the back and playing in his face. So Alan went up to pack his bags and was talking to Wancho when Nancy Drew walked in. So Alan confirmed her suspicions were correct because allegedly she hadn't heard that David confessed his sins to Alan or that Madison let the cat out of the bag with the producers or that David and Madison agreed to be each other's ride or die. So she apologized and said, I didn't want to be right. Yeah, you did. Being right would take the heat off of you of not wanting to be with David. And let's admit it, it's fun being right. So Alan said he was disgusted by the whole thing and was upset that he gave Madison so many chances to say she's out, but she never did. So he hugged it out with Thomas, then he left. And later, David came upstairs and Nancy said, did you have something to tell me? On Afterparty, she said David was about to ignore her and go to his room. At this point, he hadn't told her about Madison. She had to call him over. So David said, I want to apologize. Apologize for what? Because I lied. You lied about what? Listen, Nancy Drew, you don't give a rat's ashtray about David. You cared about the case and you solved it. What are you looking for at this point? Closure? Closure from a relationship you were never in? Both y'all were wrong. Both of you are guilty of bad behavior in this so-called marriage. So while Nancy stood there with a smug look on her face, David explained about how Madison would ask him questions and she knows more about him than Nancy does. And while he was talking, Nancy was saying, okay, got it. So eventually he was just standing there and Nancy says, "Is there anything else you need from me?" "Girl, you the one that called him over." "No." "Okay, bye." So to the confessional cam, she called him trash. Now, Nancy Drew, you did a good job with your investigation, except pulling Alan in too soon. But it's hard for me to feel bad for your situation because you treated David like crap before you knew he was creeping. David, I had some sympathy for you because of the way Nancy treated you, but creeping with Alan's wife while pretending to be Alan's friend, ooh, that is horrible. It's like I'm glad you found your person because that's why you came on the show, but the way you went about it was wrong. So I'm disappointed in you and I'm happy for you at the same time, if that makes sense. Alan, I feel bad that Madison led you to believe that you had a chance and that your feelings got hurt. That sucked, and you didn't deserve that. At the same time, you knew she wasn't into you, so you should have protected your heart better. Even after being someone who was cheated on 15 times and didn't see the signs of Madison creeping, her regularly hanging out to the wee hours in the morning without you, not wanting to kiss you or touch you even after 7 weeks should have been a red flag. And at some point, you have to stop waiting on her before now and step up and say, "I deserve better than this," and tell Madison to kick rocks long before now. I think part of the reason you were so mad is because you were mad at yourself. Like you said, you knew you weren't her person from the beginning, but instead of trusting your instincts, you trusted her. But with all that said, your heart was in the right place, and I'm sorry it got broken. Madison, I think your behavior was the worst of everyone because you led Alan on and you knew what you were doing. You knew he would be crushed to find out you were creeping. And instead of being honest and say you wanted to be friends or whatever, you allowed him to believe you were working on attraction and seeing if this marriage could work long term, knowing full well your heart belonged to David. That's just mean. You could have just left it at, "I'm not attracted to you and I want to be friends." But of course, confessing that might shorten your time on the show, which could potentially shorten your time with David. Whether that was your reason or not for staying, you played Alan for selfish reasons. Again, I'm happy you and David found each other, but the way y'all went about it was foul because Alan got hurt. I'm hoping we're going to see some sincere apologies from you in the upcoming episode. Woo! This episode had me going through all kinds of changes. Like, I knew Madison and David were lying, but would Nancy be able to get them to confess? I'm curious to see the aftermath in the next episode. Like, how will the rest of the cast feel about Madison and David? And how will the cast treat them in these last few days before decision day? Like, will they take sides or will they remain neutral? I can't wait to see what happens. This was a good one, y'all. But that's all I have for now. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in my next video.